Hey gang, and welcome back. Before we get into the gameplay, let's look at some really cool things that have happened over the last few months. First of all, we've passed 100 videos, which is pretty crazy considering I've been doing this for a year. Secondly, we've also passed 4,000 subscribers, which is also equally insane. I'm thinking about doing a 5k Q&A, so let me know what you think in the comments below. Anyway, this week we have 3 new commanders and 3 new players. I'm playing Ezuri, Claw of Progress. Joe is playing Xiahou Dun, the One-Eyed. Louis is playing Heliod, God of the Sun. And Tom is playing Wrexial, the Risen Deep. For openers, I keep an Island, a Forest, Evolutionary Leap, Edric Spymaster, Intruder Alarm, and Simic Signet. Joe keeps a hand with 3 Swamps, Urborg, Diabolic Tutor, Sensei's Divining Top, and Lightning Greaves. Louis keeps 2 Plains, Thran Dynamo, Knight of the White Orchard, Open the Armory, Stoneforge Mystic, and Steel Shaper Apprentice. Unfortunately, Tom has to mulligan multiple times, and he keeps a hand with Counterspell, Propaganda, Island, Vesuva, and Beacon of the Unrest. Louis wins the die roll, so let's begin. Our first turns are pretty simple. Louis draws a card, plays a Plains, and passes to Joe. Joe plays Urborg, casts Sensei's Divining Top, and passes to Tom. Tom plays an Island before passing to me, and similarly, I play a Forest and pass back to Louis. Louis' turn sees a bit more action. He plays a Plains, then casts Stoneforge Mystic, cutting his deck perfectly to find Sword of Feast and Famine. Joe plays a Swamp, and passes to Tom. For Tom's turn, he plays Vesuva, copying Urborg, which comes into play tapped. I play an Island for the turn, and having not drawn any mana dorks, cast Simic Signet before passing to Louis. Louis' turn sees his 3rd Plains hit the field, and he casts Sword of Feast and Famine before moving to combat. He swings Stoneforge Mystic at me, but Joe responds, using Sensei's Divining Top to look at the top 3 cards of his library. I take 1 damage, and that's the end of the combat step. With nothing else, he passes to Joe. Joe plays his 3rd Swamp, casts Lightning Greaves, and passes to Tom. Tom plays a Thespian Stage, then taps out, casting Propaganda. Having started the game with only 5 cards, he can't afford to take the hit from Feast and Famine, causing him to discard a card. Missing a land drop and still not drawing any mana dorks despite the fact that I run about 6, I cast Edric, Spymaster of Trest, hoping to dissuade Louis from attacking me and instead going for other people. Louis plays a Plains, casts Thran Dynamo, and then taps Thran Dynamo to equip the sword to a Stoneforge Mystic. Moving to combat, he swings a Stoneforge at Joe, dealing 3 damage and causing him to discard a card before allowing Louis to untap his lands. Louis' second main phase sees Dawn Elemental hit the field, a card I've never seen in EDH or any other format for that matter. It does make for a good blocker though. At the end of Louis' turn, Joe uses his Sensei's Divining Top before starting his own turn. He plays a Swamp, casts Solemn Simulacrum getting another Swamp, and then equips the Solemn with Lightning Greaves. Tom is unable to find a land and instead has to pass. I also miss my land drop and have to cast Rhystic Study before moving to combat. I swing Edric at Joe, hoping he'll let me do some damage to him and draw that 3rd land. The good news is, Joe lets me hit him. The bad news is, I don't draw a land. Louis plays a Plains for his turn, then, tapping 2 and his Thran Dynamo, casts Angelic Destiny, paying the 1 extra for my Rhystic Study. Moving to combat, Louis swings Stoneforge Mystic at Joe. Joe in turn has to discard a card, take 7 damage, whereas Louis gets to draw a card. Not a bad deal for Louis. Louis is nice enough to show the camera what the card is, and it just so happens to be Hero of Bladehold. During his 2nd main phase, he casts Heliod and passes to Joe. Joe's turn sees a main phase Diabolic Tutor finding him a Cabal Coffers, which he plays for his land drop. Giving him access to 7 mana, Joe taps Cabal Coffers, using 1 of it to use Sensei's Divining Top. With his remaining 6 mana, he casts Skithiryx, the Blight Dragon. Moving to combat, Skithiryx and Solemn Simulacrum go swinging at Louis. Dawn Elemental blocks Skithiryx, whereas Heliod stops Solemn Simulacrum in its tracks. However, Joe gets to draw a card from Solemn Dying. Tom plays an Island, then casts Sakashima's Student, having it come in as a copy of Skithiryx. He doesn't pay 1 extra, so I get to draw a card. This then reminds me that I'm a bad player at Magic because I missed a bunch of triggers off of Joe's spells. I play a Forest for my turn, then tap 3 to cast Simic Keyrune. Simic Keyrune in turn activates Simic Signet, which allows me to cast Phantasmal Image, copying Dawn Elemental. Louis plays a Plains and then taps 1 and Thran Dynamo to cast Open the Armory, paying the extra 1 colorless to prevent me from drawing. He finds Celestial Mantle, which he then casts on Dawn Elemental. Louis can't pay the extra, so I finally get to draw a card off of him. Moving to combat, he deals 13 damage to Joe, forcing Joe to discard a card, drawing 2 cards, and doubling his life, as well as untapping all of his lands, which is a pretty good combat step. Joe responds to the discard trigger, putting Sensei's Divining Top on top of his library to draw a card. He pitches that card, which happens to be Phyrexian Obliterator. During Louis' 2nd main phase, he plays one of the Plains he drew and passes to Joe. Joe's turn sees Sensei's Divining Top come into play, and it's quickly joined by Grim Monolith. He then taps Cabal Coffers to cast Xiahou Dun, sacrificing it to return Diabolic Tutor to his hand. With his remaining mana and tapping Grim Monolith, he Diabolic Tutors for Damnation, wiping the board. Tom plays a foily Sunken Hollows, and then casts Beacon of Unrest, targeting Phyrexian Obliterator. I get to draw a card, and he gets a good blocker. For my turn, I play an Island, cast Trigon Predator, and then cast Evolutionary Leap before passing to Louis. At the end of my turn, Louis uses the opportunity to create a 2/1 white Cleric Enchantment creature token. Louis top decks a card that makes him very happy, and he shows it to the camera. He plays a Plains, then activates Thran Dynamo to generate 3 colorless mana, equipping the sword onto the Cleric. With some extra mana and enough to not let me draw, he casts Angelic Destiny on his Cleric as well. He follows that up by casting Rest in Peace, which kind of tanks half the table's strategies. Moving to combat, the Cleric helps the Sword of Feast and Famine go to what I'm starting to consider its second home, which is Joe's face, dealing 8 damage, forcing him to pitch a card, and allowing Louis to untap his lands. Knowing he's about to be taken out of the game and wanting to drag us all down with him, Joe taps his Cabal Coffers to generate a bunch of mana and 1 extra to cast Myojin of Night's Reach, which comes in with its Divinity counter. He immediately removes the counter, forcing us all to discard our hand, which in turn gets exiled because of Rest in Peace. He puts the Lightning Greaves on the Myojin and swings at Louis. Louis easily blocks it with his pro-black token, causing Myojin to die. For Tom's turn, he uses Thespian Stage to copy Cabal Coffers, and then casts Spreading Seas on one of Louis' planes. At this point, I'm starting to get pretty desperate for some kind of artifact or enchantment removal, so using the Key Rune to activate the Signet, I in turn animate the Signet and sacrifice it to Evolutionary Leap. I hit Craterhoof Behemoth, which is a great card, but not the answer I'm looking for right now. With nothing else, I pass to Louis. At the end of my turn, Louis makes 2 more Cleric tokens. Louis top decks a Soul Ring and casts it before moving to combat. He swings all of his tokens at Joe, killing him, but with the untapped trigger on the stack, taps all of his lands to make 2 more tokens and then untaps his lands. With nothing else, he now passes to Tom. Tom top decks Mirko Vosk and casts him before passing to me. My turn has Temple of the False Gods come into play for my land, and then I cast Ezuri, Claw of Progress. Still trying to find a way to answer Louis' artifacts and enchantments, I sacrifice Ezuri to Evolutionary Leap, hoping to find some kind of artifact or enchantment removal. I instead find Well-Wisher, which does a whole lot of nothing. At the end of my turn, Louis makes 2 more tokens. Moving straight to combat, Louis swings all of his tokens at me, dealing 22 damage. Again, with the sword on the stack, he taps to make more tokens and then untaps his lands. He passes to Tom. At this point, both Tom and I realize that he has to draw an answer, but unfortunately that answer turns out to be Biden of Thassa. Not wanting to use his only blocker, Tom passes to me. For my land drop, I play another basic and then cast Ezuri, hoping to stem some of the damage coming from Louis. At the end of my turn, Louis makes 2 more tokens, which pretty much negates me casting Ezuri. With really nothing to stop him, Louis goes straight to combat and smashes into me, killing me. As he's done before, he makes a few more tokens and then passes to Tom. Tom goes for a Hail Mary pass, but instead draws a swamp. Realizing he's going to die over the next few turns and wanting to move to the next game, Tom scoops it up. So that was a brutal game. If you asked me who I thought would have won, it probably would not have been Heliod. The turn 2 Stoneforge Mystic into Sword of Feast and Famine was pretty nasty. In retrospect, I probably shouldn't have put Edric Spymaster of Tress out, as it was allowing Louis to generate so much advantage over all of us, it really didn't seem fair. I had hoped to use it so that it would deter him from attacking me, but all it did was make him kill Joe, who probably was the only reason we were able to stay in the game for so long. Louis did a good job of keeping Joe out of the game, forcing him to discard a card almost every single turn, and Joe seemed unable to draw any kind of gas throughout the game. Tom having to mulligan down to 5 was pretty nasty. He was only really able to interact later on in the game, at which point Louis had really already taken over. I'm not really too sure what to say about what happened with my Ezuri deck. Considering how many mana dorks I have, I thought I would be more explosive, and also I run a ton of artifact and enchantment hates, so I don't know where it went. I'm still happy that Louis won. I love the Theros gods, I think they're great commanders, and I think they're a lot of fun to see. Plus, white is often usually overlooked as a mono color because it tends to be a bit weaker, so it was kind of cool to see. Just a reminder, if you enjoyed this gameplay or any of my primers or top 10s, there's a new one every week at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time. And as always, thank you for watching, and please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe.